So this is what happened this week, right? So there was another church that called pastor, and he said, hey, can you fill in this week? And I think he called on Wednesday, was it? Was it Tuesday or Wednesday? I think, right around Tuesday night. So they called him and they said, hey, can you fill in this Sunday? And he was like, it's kind of short notice, but what's up? So what happened was their pastor was scheduled for a trip, and they thought it was next month. So they were like, we got time. And then they found out, no, it's this week. So pastor asked me if I could fill in here, and then we asked somebody else if they could fill in, and they were like, don't really feel comfortable with that. And I was like, okay. So I kind of committed to that before I knew that, hey, you've got to do a message, right? I was like, okay. So then I mulled it over all week, and nothing looked good. Like, I went through all my past ones, and I was like, man, that doesn't feel good at all. And then Sarah's like, well, we're doing Easter stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll go to Easter stuff. Nope. And then we got to Saturday morning, and we do a Bible study with the leadership team. And we were talking about sanctification. And I went, I'm going to talk about that because I like that. We were talking about washing the inward parts instead of the outward parts. So instead of washing the outside of the cup, you have to change what's inside first. So changing your thought pattern instead of changing just what you say. We're going to be in Matthew 5, verse 13. And all the way to like Matthew 7. So So if I had to title this, the title that I came up with was Learning from Christ. It's kind of a hard lesson because it's one of those hard and fast, you're either with me or you're against me kind of deals. We're going to be in Matthew 5:13 first. You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. Keep that in mind as we go through this. Christ says, look, you are what I put on earth to be the salt. You are the flavor. If you lose that, what good are you to me? Keep that in mind. We're going to jump down. Why did you even write that down? We're going to jump down to 17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth. Until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Christ says, you are still held to this standard. I think as a universal church, we need to be reminded of that. See, a lot of how the world perceives the church is, I don't do this, and that makes me righteous. I don't do this. I abstain from heavy drinking, so I'm better. I abstain from drugs, so I'm better. That's not what Christ says here at all. He's essentially telling you, look, all that law, that's on the inside now. He reiterates this later. In verse 21, have you not heard it was said to the people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Reka, is answerable to the Sanhedrin. But anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. You see what he just did? What he did is he said, look, that outward thing that you used to be punished for, that's just the tip of the iceberg. I want what's on the inside to be set apart, to be holy. It's not enough that you just don't act on your anger. I don't want that there. That's where the sin is. That's where it starts. It doesn't start when you're actually doing the act. That makes sense? He reiterates this again. 27. You may have heard it was said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than the whole body be thrown into hell. Are you starting to get the picture of what he wants? Too often we make what he wants about a show. So what do? We present our best every time for people. You know what that does? It does just like Facebook does. You read people's Facebook and you're like, wow, their life is great. Right? I got a friend at work. You read his Facebook and his life is phenomenal. Like he's going to this trip and he's gone here and he's done this. And his kids are going through this. But you talk to him, and you know what happened? He's gone through a divorce. He just lost his brother. His life is not good. See, every time that we try to present this squeaky clean image, we're letting people know this is what makes me good. This is why Christ says, hey, no. It's not about what's here. It's not about what color you see. It's about what's on the inside. What's really going on. You ever heard the expression lead with your faults? Ever heard that? Businesses that do this succeed a lot. Businesses that come in and go, I can deliver the world. They'll get the initial contract, and then they'll get sued later when they can't fulfill it. Your businesses that succeed, your people that succeed, come in and say, look, we've had problems with this in the past. I want to let you know that right up front. And then that company, when they come to work with you, goes, all right, I have a little bit better understanding of you. It's the same way people work. Are there problems in the church? Yes. Yes. Are there problems with Christians? Yes. Are any of us perfect? No. But too often we present this squeaky clean image of, don't worry, come to church and you'll be perfect. I'm going to let you know right now, don't think that's possible. Ever. Not on this side of glory. Too often, somebody will walk through the door, they're here to learn. And then we're like, wow, he's still drinking? Okay, yeah, Christ is working on him. No worries, man. Christ's still working on you too. Too often, we look at what's on the outside and we judge too quickly. Way too quick. What's Christ saying here? Let's not do that. Matter of fact, he goes further with it. Let's go to 31. It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, read that, adultery, causes her to become an adulteress. And anyone who marries the divorced woman commits adultery. What's he saying here? Work it out. That's hard. It is hard to work out your problems with another individual. Trust me. But Christ says, you know what? You have to do this. I don't like this. I joined you together to be one. Not to be two, acting as one. To be one. This, he is getting at every little aspect of our life, especially the ones we try to hide in here. There's a lot of people that you talk to them and their marriage is great, and then a month later you're like, why? What? You got divorced? What happened? Why didn't you reach out for help? Why didn't you let people know? We can help you. That's weird. Again, down in 43 to 47, the end of the chapter. Gets harder. You have heard that it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. This gets a little bit deeper, doesn't it? So now, I don't only have to treat the people good and think of them rightly, just the people I like. Now, I actually have to pray for my enemies. And not just my enemies, the ones that actively persecute me. Now, I am one that's a hard one for me. Like, that's a nail for me. Like, it drives right through me. Because I don't take persecution well. Anybody else in my boat? I've got room. It's a big boat. It's a big one. We even got staff, so it's a big boat. I don't take persecution well. This is one that I struggle with. Like, you're coming at me. You're aggressing me. I'm aggressing you. But what does Christ say? Hey, stop for a minute. Who do you think you represent? Am I so small that I can't handle this problem? No. Not bad. Pray for them. A lot of times that comes with the understanding that you have to pray for yourself in that moment as well. Because have you ever heard the phrase, and I think Kenny's been saying this a lot, takes two to get in trouble? Well, it takes two to make an enemy, too. Because there has to be an offender and somebody who's offended. I tell people this all the time. Why do you care what they say about you? Well, I don't like being called an idiot. Okay? How much weight do you give his word? Are you honoring his word? Because that's not a good idea. I tell people all the time, I don't care what you say about me. I don't mind what you say. Them are your words. That's cool. Let me tell you mine. I deal with this every night at work. Every night without fail. Trust me. We have issues with others because we're not the same people. And you have to take a step back and go, all right, how would you want this done? This is the reason I did this like this. And then the problem usually goes away when there's a little bit of understanding. When we pray for one another, usually there's some understanding. There's some humbleness. Because without that, it's just pride against pride. See, this is one of the harder ones to get at. Because these are people I don't like. I like the ending of this verse, though. And remember, we're in Matthew. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? Now, if you had a little giggle on that, you probably know the context of Matthew. What was Matthew before he was an apostle? I got a little context on this. Even my brethren tax collectors, the ones that beat people over money, they even love people who love them. That must have stung to write. Just a little bit. Remember, in that day, the time the tax collectors would come to your doorstep with club in hand. It was not, hey, fill this form out and send you your money. Maybe we'll get back to you in 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe. Nope. He would go around with a club and he would take just as many taxes as he could because his pay came out of that. And they were ruthless. Even that guy can love those who love him. Christ says, if you're with me, you're a son, your Father in heaven, then you should even love the people who hate you. You should pray for them. It is very hard to pray for your enemies. It's very easy to pray like, God, I wish you would just change them. Let them see my way. Yes. Yes. That's not what he's talking about here. The prayer is for their good. Maybe they do need to change. Maybe they're caught in a sin. Maybe they just need to see Christ. But we need some understanding or we're never going to change. See, it takes one generation. One. And the church can be gone. But it also takes one generation and the church can do its job and excel. Right now, you take a look around and you ask non-Christians, non-church people, what's a Christian? How do they act? 9 out of 10 times, you're going to get the word fake. You know why? Because we've put so much emphasis on what you do and not enough emphasis on what has been changed. Jesus is trying to put the emphasis on this is what should be changed in your life. And here. Not here. Yes, you shouldn't go around murdering people, but that's not the end of the story. Yes, you shouldn't go around hating people. That's not the end of the story. Should change here. We were talking about this. Me and my wife were talking about this with our oldest. Sarah'd say something, and she'd have this whip back, like a quick talk back, right? So then, Sarah said something, look, you shouldn't do that. So she stopped doing it, right? She stopped audibly saying it. She just gave it one of those looks. And she said, hey, stop right there. I didn't say nothing. I know you didn't say nothing. Good job. However, we want to change that thought. See, when we tell you something, it's for your good. We are trying to help you. When Christ tells us something, He's not trying to ruin our lives. When He says you should pray for your enemies, He's not trying to ruin our lives. When He says you should give to the needy, He's not trying to ruin us. What He says is good. He's trying to help us. But a lot of times, we look at God like He's looking down like this. So we try to stand up straight and act right. Not understanding that this outside appearance, there's nothing for. It's what's on the inside that He cares about. Chapter 6. Be careful be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men, to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward. But when you give to the needy, let your left hand know what you do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. You understand? When I first took the treasurer spot, it was funny. Because everyone thinks that whatever we give to the church is like a total secret. Right? You know that's not true. I actually looked up the laws on it. It's not true at all. Matter of fact, anybody can go in there and request. I can tell them that they have to go get a court order if I want to. But anybody, they can FOIA it. Completely within legal bounds. And I would literally have to give them 2 years. It's not a secret. But a lot of people give in secret. You know why? because they don't want to be known as that person who does this or that. There were projects that we've done around the church that we were like, we don't even know if we should really bring this up because that's a lot. And then pastor's like, you know what? Just announce it. And if it happens, it happens. Cool. So we'd announce it. And out of nowhere, we get a check mailed to us with a letter. Don't say my name. Okay. You got it, random guy. Cool. Because they don't want recognition for it. They don't want everybody to look at them and go, oh yeah, thanks for that. That's not what they want. They just want to help out. We do this all the time. We just don't understand that we're doing it. When you hold the door for somebody, you let somebody sit down. You let somebody use your book. But this is really hard when it comes to needy. When we serve the homeless, or when we give to a shelter. More often than not, people will tell you about what they're giving to. You're not going to find out what I give to. More often than not, my wife doesn't know what I give to. She just knows cash went out the door. And she's like, hey, quit spending so much. More often than not, I don't know what she gives to. There was one time we got a letter in the mail, and it's like, hey, you want to renew your subscription to this? And I'm like, you subscribe to that? And she's like, oh, yeah. I still support that ministry. I'm like, oh. We do this a lot. Now, it's not commonplace anymore to come up and like drop your offering like you're dropping a big sack of coins. That's not commonplace anymore. But here's what is commonplace that Christians are definitely guilty of. When you're talking to your non-Christian friends, and they're like, so what are you doing this weekend or that weekend? And you're like, oh, I just tithe, I can't do that. And you just casually slip it in, right? And you know they're listening? Yeah, he sees that. Yeah. We're guilty of that. Or we brag about how much we give. Or we brag about how many people that we've helped. We're guilty of that. He says, don't do any of that. Just help them and move on. Forget it. Do it again. This is very hard because people like to talk about the good works that they do. It's very, very difficult not to. Because a lot of times those good works make you happy. It's not that we can't talk about them, it's that we can't brag about them. A lot of times it comes off that way. Remember, the world doesn't see the greater church. Down in 5. When you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by men. I tell you the truth, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. This is something that I don't think we have real issues with outside the church. This is why I include this, though. We're here. Have you ever been praying corporately, right, with somebody else, and they give a sermon? You ever done that? I have. I've been there. I've been there a lot. And then you go, are you praying to God or are you talking to me? Are we done praying? Are you soapboxing? No, they're saying Father. You've mentioned God a lot, but you're talking to me. Or you're talking to the group. What's going on? You ever had that happen? The hypocrites used to do the same thing. Except they didn't get around in a circle. The synagogue would all stop, and there'd be prayers. The hypocrites, they would come right up the center and just start screaming. Or they would stand out in the street corner, and they'd be dancing around, screaming. They'd put their prayers right here, by the way. Just to let people know, I pray a lot. And that's what it was for. To let people know, hey, I pray a lot. You may talk a lot. You don't pray a lot. You have a lot of words. You ain't saying nothing. This is one of those things that I see in the church a lot. When you have new believers and they come to a prayer session and they get 7 sermons, you know how much of a chance you have of them coming back next week? About a 0. They're going to be like, whoa, whoa. God is so mighty and He knows everything, but you got to tell Him 12 times. Well, think about that. How silly that sounds when said out loud. We do it. I used to do that. Stop doing that. I read and I learned. And I went, that's vain repetition. I stopped just trying to impress people. Because why? No, you won't. Because I learned a long time ago, there is always somebody better than you. You may be the next hottest thing for 5 minutes. Guess what? YouTube moves fast. All of this stuff that he's talking about, all this outward stuff, this is all a show. Chapter 7, 1 through 4. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure that you use, you will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? This so often happens to new believers that it's almost like a rite of passage. New believers come in, right? And they've made a decision to consciously follow Christ. They've made that decision. They're in the same boat as you now. Got the same sins. Got the same Father. And we go, well, you don't dress right. Why are you still swearing? I thought you were a Christian. Hey? Why are you still going to the bars? I thought you were a Christian. Why are you still watching those types of movies? What are you doing with that girl? You're not even married yet. I thought you were a Christian. Oh. I thought you were a Christian. Didn't you pray for me? See, a lot of times we overlook what's going on in our lives because we've justified what we do. And we look at especially new believers and we try to pick apart their life, not knowing that, we're called babes in Christ when we come to Christ. So that's like me telling Ian, why ain't your baby running yet? You signed him up for football? Not playing hockey yet? Not even doing calculus. Wives. Right? But it would be foolish for us to expect a baby to get up and run, right? We get that. We can physically see that. And we all enjoy babies, right? Like I do. We know Greg does. Like, Greg's like, baby. It's great. But we never expect the baby to act the way we do. We never expect the baby to be a full-grown adult. Not for a couple years. But somehow we expect new believers to have it all together. Somehow we expect those without Christ to have it all together. See, we're in the lit room. We can see the obstacles. We should be the ones trying to avoid them. The ones without Christ are in the dark room. They don't even know there's obstacles. They don't even know they're falling. Why are we so hard on them? The only thing that we should be asking of them, here's Christ. See, without Christ, they don't even know what they're missing. They've lived in darkness all their life. Why judge them for the way they are? I've heard it put this way: if you judge a fish by how high they can jump or how many trees they can climb, they're going to fail every time. But if you use that same measurement for frogs and monkeys, you might do better. We're going to end today in Matthew 7, verses 21 through 23. This is hard to read. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say on that day, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And did in your name drive out demons and perform many miracles? I want to stop there for a second. They prophesied in his name. You know what that means? That means they preached. That means they preached the word of God. They drove out demons in his name. That means they used the name God. They did miracles in his name. And still, then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. All the other passages that we've read, everything he was talking about, he says, do this. Do this. I say to you. And now he's saying, look, if you don't follow what my Father says, you're going to come to the end. Read that heaven. And you're going to say, Lord, there you are. And he's going to go, you shouldn't be here. You're in the wrong place. You took a right when you should have took a left. The stairs are over there. That is mind-numbingly hard to read for a Christian. Because when you think about your Christian walk, and it is all about what you see, what you present, that puts you in that boat. God says, don't commit murder. No. I say to you, do not be angry with your brother. He even goes on later in that passage to say, if you have something against your brother and you are here offering your gift, get up at that moment and leave. Reconcile, come back. I will not hear it. That is hard to hear. Especially if it's your fault, right? I've made a boo-boo, and I've got to go humble myself. Or God won't even hear my prayers. Nope. That's the hardest thing for us to do. He's telling you here, it's not a show. He's telling you here, you have to follow this even on the inward parts. And if you refuse to follow what has been said, I don't know who you are. He even goes so far as to call them evildoers. This week, examine yourself. Ask yourself, do I put on a show, or is this really who I am? Trust me, it is better to be who you are than who people expect you to be. Because eventually that image will fade. You can't keep that up forever. I don't know how many of you guys in here has ever tried to impress a lady, but you can't keep doing those stunts forever. Trust me. Eventually, they're going to see this is who he really is. Do the same thing with Christ. We do the same thing with the world. Look, I'm doing all these things, God. I'm preaching. I'm telling my neighbors. I'm doing miracles. Look. And he says, I just want you to follow what I say. I want you to be changed. Can I get a volunteer to pray? Wow. Wow. All right. Okay. Want to volunteer to pray us out?